In the video, tracking the shipment of North Korean ammunition to the Russians, one thing became clear: the big advantage the North Koreans have over South Korea. It's different from what most people think. No, it's not their nuclear weapons yet, but the vast stretch of artillery lines that the North Koreans have positioned along the southern border. In today's video, we're going to talk more about this and see what North Korea's strategy is for dealing with the South in the event of a war. But before that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share the video with everyone you know. Your support is very important for the Geopolitics World channel to keep going, and consider becoming a member. As a member, not only will you have 1 month early access to the videos here on the channel, but you'll also get access to exclusive content with course videos, full podcasts, and live streams. I'm Geopolitica Mundial, and this is the Geopolitica Mundial channel. Range Corporation, a United States think tank linked to the Department of State and intelligence agencies, released a report on possible scenarios if conflict erupts between the two Koreas, the United States and intelligence. These reports are not prophecies that aim to predict 100% of wars, but besides their high accuracy rate. What's important for you to understand is that these reports give us a sense of what we call risk analysis, so we can have some factual perspective, and without guesswork about the consequences involved in these scenarios. The first thing we have to consider is North Korea's military capability, because here we have situation 880. On one hand, we have those who think that North Koreans are on the verge of extinction, and others who think that North Korea is paradise on earth, as if it were those Jehovah's Witness pamphlets, and it's neither one nor the other. The first thing you need to keep in mind is that the North Korean leader is not crazy, but a cold, highly rational and calculating actor, just like his father and grandfather. Thinking that he is crazy would simply make North Korea an unpredictable and unstable actor, but it's far from that. Like it or not, they are stable and quite mathematical in their actions. The North Korean leadership may be many things, but crazy is not one of them, despite the enormous weaknesses that North Koreans have, which undermine their capabilities. In fact, they are able to maneuver well politically in their relations with China, with Russia, and with other countries. And contrary to what most people think, they could use nuclear weapons, and that's why they are so feared. The truth is still that no, for now, at the date I'm recording this video, no. They still don't have efficient means of delivering their nuclear weapons, and that's just as important as actually having nuclear weapons themselves. This means that for now they don't have the means to get their nuclear warheads to the target country, even if it's South Korea. But I repeat, for now. For that they need what we call warhead miniaturization, which means the ability to make the warheads fit into their intercontinental ballistic missiles, something that at this moment they still don't have, despite Pyongyang's claims. On the other hand, nothing implies that in the event of an invasion of their country, they wouldn't use nuclear weapons defensively, neutralizing any potential aggressors. So, North Korea's great advantage is its vast artillery spread along the border with South Korea. The North Korean army can use its rocket and tube artillery, firing highly explosive shells to threaten the civilian population, infrastructure, and industry in South Korea. This would give North Korea the power to coerce the South Korean government or retaliate against South Korean military or political actions. And this without even needing to resort to its chemical or nuclear arsenals. If these artillery systems fired chemical or nuclear weapons, then it would be even worse. From bad to disastrous, because then this threat to South Korean civilian populations would increase drastically. Although the recent dialogue between the United States, South Korea, and North Korea may reduce the risk of conflict or a restart of the Korean War, this initiative is still quite new and its results are still uncertain. Until lasting peace is achieved and North Korea's massive artillery force is dismantled, this remains a serious, real, and immediate threat. Thus, it is clear that without prior warning, North Korea could cause thousands of casualties in just 1 minute and more than 100,000 in about an hour. The North Koreans' options for launching these attacks range from focusing on Seoul to spreading their fire along the entire length of the demilitarized zone. Challenges South Korea and the United States would face in stopping the attacks, or alternatively, protecting the civilian population before they could cause very serious damage, are absurdly enormous. This shows the importance that the ideal is simply to avoid war or de-escalate as quickly as possible. North Korea has thousands of tons of chemical agents, many of them turned into weapons to be used in artillery. And they may have between 20 to 100 nuclear devices that, although they cannot be effectively used in attacks, demonstrate the capability to build uranium weapons small enough to be used in rocket artillery. They wouldn't be as destructive as nuclear weapons, but they would still be devastating. But in the simulations, if we omit chemical and nuclear weapons, we can only calculate the effects of conventional artillery and the risk it poses to South Korean population centers. You can gauge the scale of damage since North Korea's military is among the largest globally, with around 1 million to 200,000 active personnel. And although much of North Korea's equipment is, yes, obsolete, and its defense spending is much lower than that of all its neighboring countries, the militaristic and almost continuous state of readiness of the regime along the border of the demilitarized zone, which houses half of the entire North Korean army, ensures that Pyongyang's conventional artillery remains in a constant state of immediate response capability. Currently, it is estimated that they have around 4,800 pieces of small, medium, and long-range artillery along the entire demilitarized zone, which can fire artillery shells and rockets up to 25 kilometers for long-range artillery. Approximately 950 of these pieces could reach the South Korean capital, Seoul, and the surrounding population centers. And a large part of this artillery is located in reinforced artillery positions, heavily fortified with anti-aircraft defense capabilities deployed in the area. These physical protection measures make airstrikes and counter-battery fire against North Korea's artillery a challenge for United States and South Korean forces. That is, even though South Korean and American air forces are vastly superior. The number of artillery pieces protected by these devices would mean it would take a very, very long time before they could be properly neutralized. Which would mean that in the meantime, the destruction caused in South Korea would be on a biblical scale. South Korean aviation is absolutely and vastly superior to North Korean aviation, but the number of North Korean targets would make this task almost impossible. South Korea is currently the 27th most populous country in the world, with over 50 million people. Nearly 50% of the country's population, about 25 million people, live in the Greater Seoul area alone. These civilians are vulnerable to advanced medium-range artillery attacks from North Korea. And downtown Seoul is vulnerable to North Korean medium-range devices that are positioned around the North Korean city of Kaesong. And to estimate the number of casualties and deaths resulting from potential North Korean artillery attacks, first, it's important to look at the number of their artillery systems. Whether cannons or rocket launchers with a range greater than 10 kilometers usually located within range of South Korea, these are the medium and long-range systems that are deployed along the demilitarized zone. To make the analysis easier, the systems were divided into groups associated with each forward course of North Korea, and the areas with the highest population density in South Korea were identified, which could be targeted by each type of system in each group, with the potential specific target areas for each type of system in each core group of the North Korean forces. It was done based on 5 cases. Case 1, economic attack on the LGP-10 factory in Paju. Case 2, coercive attack on a demonstration in the demilitarized zone. Case 3, coercive attack. Demonstration in Seoul. Case 4, artillery barrage with an attack along the Case 5, artillery attack on Seoul, or turning it into a sea of fire. For each case, the number of artillery shots, shells, and rockets of each size that could be fired at each target area was assessed. By estimating the maximum rates of fire achievable by each type of artillery system during 1 minute and 1 hour, based on undisclosed military sources from South Korea and the United States, in the first case, the economic attack, North Korea would launch a surprise artillery barrage on the LGP-10 complex in Paju using 6 152mm howitzers and 6 122mm multiple rocket launchers. The attack, even though brief, would employ only 12 pieces of artillery. But even so, it could cause thousands of casualties if it were launched during LG's peak production hours, since the complex houses more than 20,000 employees, and the point is that a North Korean attack on such a significant economic target would be damaging to the South Korean economy with even global impacts. And it would have a profound psychological effect on the population of South Korea. In 5 minutes, there would already be an estimated 8,500 casualties, including dead and injured, just in this area. Notice that, looking at this border area, we would have almost 30,000 dead. Again, in minutes. In case 2, the coercive attack involving the demilitarized zone. North Korea carries out a coercive attack lasting only 1 minute, using all the medium-range artillery of its forward core to hit cities and population centers along the entire length of the demilitarized zone. When compared to Case 4, which we will look at later, a medium-range attack would reach Seoul in 1 minute, causing about 4 times more casualties, 10,000 artillery shells in 1 minute focusing on Seoul. It has the potential to reach figures of more than 150,000 casualties, which would include both injured and dead. This artillery barrage against downtown Seoul could produce tens of thousands of civilian casualties. Such an attack, even if it lasts only a few minutes, can have devastating effects on the South Korean economy and population, which would also end up impacting the global economy. In Case 3, the coercive demonstration attack in Seoul, North Korea would launch a surprise barrage of rockets at downtown Seoul using 240mm rocket launchers. Although the brief attack would use only 54 rocket launches, it could cause tens of thousands of casualties and induce public panic. It's hard to estimate civilian casualties here because we're talking about an area that puts more than 2 million people as potential targets. There would probably be, within minutes and hours, already hundreds of thousands of dead and wounded. In case for the worst case, with the North Korean artillery barrage extending its attack throughout the entire Seoul area, North Korea would launch a massive barrage without warning, a downpour of iron and fire, deploying over 5,700 long and medium-range artillery pieces along the entire demilitarized zone. The attack would hit the main population centers, Incheon, Seoul, Gimpo, Paju, and Yeongcheon, among other important cities. Camp Casey, a United States Army base, houses over 6,300 troops. We're talking about around 385,000 shots in just 1 hour, which would already estimate more than 200,000 civilian casualties, including dead and wounded. Finally, Case 5, the artillery barrage, the attack on Seoul, and the Sea of Fire. In this scenario, the North Koreans unleash a sudden massive barrage on Seoul's most densely populated downtown areas. Using 324 medium-range pieces just now, North Korea's medium-range devices are capable of reaching the city where 10 million people live. With thousands of self-explosive munitions in a single barrage, that's about 14,000 shots in just 1 hour. Although Case 5 is smaller than Case 4, it's already enough for us to be talking about around 130,000 civilian casualties. In this chart then, we have the human cost of this war compared to other high mortality events in history. However, what I want you to keep in mind is that we're only talking about the first minutes of this war, that is just the first hour of the war between North Korea and South Korea. This analysis then serves to consider the consequences of North Korea using limited conventional artillery attacks. In other words, that it is neither chemical nor nuclear against South Korea as a means to coerce, retaliate, deter, or terrorize its population centers. In other words, the use of chemical and nuclear weapons was not even calculated. So, despite being obsolete, the North Korean military apparatus, which generally dates back to the 1950s, 60s, or at most the 70s, should not be underestimated due to its volume. Forget about a repeat of the Korean War. The North Koreans, without the use of nuclear weapons, would not be able to advance south and defeat the South Koreans. Believing in a North Korean victory without them using nuclear weapons is to have no grasp of reality. The North Koreans would hardly even be able to cross the 38th parallel that divides the two countries, but, and this is very important, South Korea would suffer devastation unlike anything since the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II. Would that take it out of the global economic chain? Maybe for decades, and the already fragile global economy would be hit like a stab in the gut. Given South Korea's vital importance to high-tech production in the world, a key conclusion from the 5 scenarios presented is that the ultimate challenge for South Korea, the United States, and their allies is primary and absolute. Above all, avoid a situation in which North Korea feels compelled to attack the South with its conventional artillery. And the report indicates that if the North Koreans were to initiate such an attack, the goal of South Korea, the United States, and their allies should be to stop the shelling to prevent further escalation, given that North Korean bombardments could kill many thousands of people in just 1 hour without warning. It would be very difficult for South Korea and the United States, once the attack has started, to stop it or otherwise protect the South Korean civilian population. However, despite the casualties from such an attack, which would be terrible, they would still be insignificant compared to the victims that could result from a nuclear attack against Seoul or other South Korean cities if the North Koreans actually managed to develop all the stages of this warfare capability, nuclear war. Thank you all, I hope you enjoyed it, and a special thanks to Nilvo Puntel for contributing a lot to the World Geopolitics channel. Thank you, Nilvo. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And follow us on Instagram and Telegram to stay up to date with the channel's news. Hugs and see you in the next video.